with Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg. Mr. Secretary, good to see you this morning. Before we look ahead to a potential infrastructure bill, let's talk about what's inside this massive $1.9 trillion package for infrastructure. We had airlines, United and American Airlines, letting their furloughed employees know this week after the passage of this bill they could rip up those furloughs, that they would be coming back to work. So what does this new law do for transportation in this country?
That's right. It felt really good to see those messages going out to employees saying you can tear up your furlough notice. We're going back to work. Similarly, on the Amtrak side, they're already taking steps to add back routes that had to be cut because Amtrak lost so much of their ridership. Remember, Amtrak was actually running in the black operationally for the first time in a long time just before COVID hit, and it's been devastating. The American Rescue Plan makes sure that we're literally back on track there. There's payroll support. There's support for employees. There's support for transit agencies, which, by the way, in my view, is directly connected to fighting COVID because people literally need to be able to physically get to where their medical care and their vaccination sites are. So a lot of transportation-oriented investments here, just part of what the American Rescue Plan is going to do to pull us through this crisis. And last night was just, I think, an extraordinary statement about what government is for, which is solving our problems and helping make it possible for us to go forward and thrive as a country.
Mr. Secretary, you've gotten into the DOT and had a quick look under the hood. I'm curious, what are America's greatest infrastructure needs right now? If there is an infrastructure bill that's following up, what are some of the most important elements that need to be in that bill?
Well, there's a lot we've got to do to look to the future. Think about what it would mean to this country if Americans could expect the same quality of passenger rail travel as people in other developed countries. Think about what it will mean to this country when we have enough electric vehicle charging stations that these incredible vehicles that Detroit and other automakers are producing are something you could take anywhere. But it's not just the kind of sizzling, futuristic stuff. Frankly, a lot of it's taking care of the basics. The engineers came out with their report card again. I think we got a D+ in a lot of the categories because we know that there is an enormous backlog just in terms of our roads and bridges. We've just got to fix, as Governor Whitmer often said, fix the damn roads. And that is a safety issue. We know what happens when a bridge is in poor repair and is allowed to stay that way. It's a jobs issue because there's an enormous amount of work to be done. So we're going to have to do equal parts looking to the future, but also taking care of what we've already got with an eye toward climate, with an eye toward equity, and with an eye toward all the jobs that we can create while also making it all safer.
And paying for it and getting Republicans on board for a massive infrastructure plan. There are, most see years ahead of work, possibly tens of thousands of jobs created, but it's got to be paid for. What are your thoughts looking ahead at working with Republicans to get a plan approved?
Yeah, I think it's no secret that this is going to be the most challenging part about keeping this bipartisan. I'll tell you, I'm talking to Republicans in the House and Senate just about every day. They are just as excited as the rest of the American people about what we can build, what we can repair, what we can do for infrastructure, because everybody here in Washington represents a home state or a home district that needs the work. But we've got to come to terms on how to pay for it. Now, the real question is how much of this should be paid for with revenue that is raised as part of the vision for the bill. And there are a lot of different ways to get at that. Historically, for example, we've mostly relied on the gas tax in order to fund our highways. But the gas tax hasn't been adjusted since 1993. It was never pegged to inflation. And even, at best, that's a medium-term solution because as electric vehicles come onto the road, people are going to use less gas anyway. So we've got a lot of decisions to make. There are a lot of different ways to do it. And I will say this about infrastructure investment. Unlike what was promised in the past about things like tax cuts for the wealthy, when you make an investment in infrastructure, it really does pay for itself. It's got a return on the investment. And I do think that ought to be part of the math as we're thinking about the finances here.
Victoria, next question.
Thanks. Secretary Buttigieg, I want to build off of Mika's questions. I'm in a very red state in Texas, so I just can already hear the pushback on the infrastructure bill. And I know here in Texas, one of the main lines of that pushback is we can pay for it ourselves. We'll build roads that pay for themselves through toll. That we will take care of it. We don't want to rely on the government. We don't want to increase the deficit, especially in light of the rescue plan. So how do you talk to these Republican governors? How do you talk to these Republican counterparts that are going to be pushing back?
Well, the reality is the maintenance backlog exists in Texas, just like it exists in every other part of the country. We really need this. And you know, it doesn't take a lot of convincing for the American people. This is pothole season, right? Especially as weather warms up. Anyone driving on roads knows that we could be doing more as a country. And frankly, Texas is a great example of a place that really relies on quality infrastructure because you have those big stretches that need to be covered by good roads. And by the way, I actually think Texas is a place that would benefit enormously economically from quality passenger rail as well. What I'm finding is that the mayors see this, by and large, people you talk to see this. And I think a lot more legislators see this than they might be willing to say in public. We've just got to find that deal space where we can get something done because this is not a blue state thing. Red states and blue states alike will benefit from better quality infrastructure.
All right, before you go, how's the job feel? Pete, Mayor Pete, Secretary Pete?
I love my job. It is so interesting. The work is so important. It's compelling. And I'll tell you, this department, it's full of people who are here because they believe in the work that they do. And there's a kind of quiet satisfaction, especially for the people who work in safety, which is the fundamental role of this department. You know, in many ways, a good day for us is when you don't see a headline about a safety situation, whether it's airplanes or pipelines or anything else that we're in charge of. There's just that spirit of public service around here that I really love with the team that's here. And I also think there's never been a better moment to have this job because there's this amazing, rare combination of public impatience, bipartisan interest, and very supportive leadership in the White House to do big things on infrastructure.
Secretary Pete Buttigieg, thank you so much. We really appreciate you being with us this morning.